Hello and welcome to Awkward Family Conversations, an intergenerational discussion of topics of interest to millennials and Zoomers. I'm here with my dad, Rhett, who, as kind of a follow-up from last week, this is one of my favorite Rhett trivias, proposed to my mother with a 5-year plan. Hi, Dad.
Hello, Ed. And I don't know why anybody doesn't propose with a 5-year plan, because it makes sense. It's you're talking about the future, and there's a lot of elements to the future, a lot of dimensions, and it should be it should be part of the discussion. And so
I just feel like that's not how you should lead into the discussion.
well, you want to lay your cards on the table. It's I think a totally appropriate way, and it worked. She
You're
agreed to
married.
marry me, and here we are 31 plus years later.
It's true.
It'll be 32 this year, so clearly it's a superior way to go about arranging your future marriage. So,
All right.
hello, Ed. I am here with my younger daughter, Addie, as always. When Addie was younger, she was usually pretty responsible and very good kid.
Oh, no.
But there was one time when she was in high school when she went out, snuck out of the house with her swim team friends the night before we had a very big travel day back to the East Coast, because we were going to go on a family trip to Montreal, and we were flying to New York, and we had to be up at 4 a.m. and we gave her the 10 o'clock curfew. She came home at 10 o'clock, threw a big hissy fit, had words. She came out, apologized, and I thought, well, I had done a great job as a dad, and then that she had gone out the window.
Yep.
After that. So, hello, Ed.
Hey, Dad. Got a tracker put on my phone for that one, and it deserved it. I'll take that. But also, good story, worth it.
Was it? Was it worth it?
It's fun.
All right. Well,
I didn't do anything too crazy, so I was safe.
Well, that's the thing about that stuff, is you don't really know how the evening will go, and when you're
I
out,
indeed got lucky, and I never did it again.
there you go. So
I did continue to stay out past curfew in the future, only a couple more times, and then I did never sneak out again. So
very good. That probably had more to do with the difficulty you had getting back in your window afterwards than it did.
Also, like,
youth.
Y'all gave me a real good, we're not angry, we're just disappointed conversation. So that very motivated not to do that anymore.
Oh, I'm glad it worked. I'm glad to hear that. So, we do have a follow-up item from last week. You showed ignorance about our Puritan forefathers in the love triangle in Plymouth colony between John Alden, Miles Standish, and Priscilla Mullins. And so I mentioned the line, "Why don't you speak for yourself, John?" which is what Priscilla Mullins uttered to John Alden, who was sent to express the love that Miles Standish, his roommate, had for Priscilla. John Alden, also in love with Priscilla, and in fact ultimately married Priscilla Mullins. Priscilla Mullins was the only eligible woman in Plymouth colony, so a lot of attention. And so actually the line, "Why don't you speak for yourself, John," is from a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who is a descendant of John Alden and Priscilla Mullins. And he said that this was oral history in his family, but he wrote the Courtship of Miles Standish. Standish was a poem that he wrote, and in it, he addressed a lot of other aspects of the Plymouth colony, but he also addressed this triangle and how Miles Standish sent John Alden to speak on his behalf, and John Alden, depending on your perspective, I suppose, at Priscilla's urging, professed his own love for Priscilla Mullins and ended up marrying Priscilla Mullins. Now, here's an interesting personal fact about this, is I think I also know and have coffee every Wednesday with a descendant of John Alden and Priscilla Mullins, David Hobbs, who's a good friend of mine and a college professor and a fascinating guy. He traces his direct ancestry to the Plymouth colony, and I believe, I'll have to confirm next time I see him, that he is in fact John Alden and Priscilla Mullins descendant, because John Alden, I think, was the cooper, guy who made barrels, and he was not a Puritan. He was a contracted guy who came along with them because he had skills that were necessary. And so anyway, so that was a fascinating follow-up thing for me personally, just because I have a personal connection with this. But I am astonished that you had not heard of the courtship of Miles Standish.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right. Very good. All right. Well, now that we can dispense with that, and we've resolved our naked time from last week, right? There's no more.
You owe me. You owe me so much.
No more issues about the naked time discussion from last week.
I've never paid for my own therapy, ever.
All right. What is our topic for today, Ed?
Our topic for today is how do I have a healthy relationship with my community of family, friends, and colleagues?
All right. So we've talked about, in this our season of health, we've talked about physical health and all the different pieces there. We've talked in the last couple of weeks about healthy relationships, first with yourself and then with your partner. And now we're just going to talk more broadly about, the personal relationships that you have with other people, like family, friends, colleagues, coworkers, other people that you interact with on a regular basis. And then I think next week we're going to talk more broadly about kind of how to be in the world, and talk about health from kind of that mental. How do you stay true to yourself and focused and grounded in the world? But today we'll talk about these friendships, family relationships that aren't partner based, and all the people that we see on a fairly regular basis and have interactions with on a fairly regular basis. Our 2 minutes of internet. What's that?
Outside of the pandemic.
Right. Under normal circumstances, right.
I certainly hope you're not regularly seeing your community of friends right now.
Only on Zoom, as it turns out. So anyway, we had two minutes of internet research this week, benefited greatly from government organizations. Australia, the healthdirect.gov.au, which is an Australian health and human services website, had some interesting information. The portal.ct.gov, so the state of Connecticut, had some interesting resources on friendship and healthy friendships. And the California Department of Developmental Services also contributed to our knowledge for today's topic. So there is quite a bit of resources out there at the state and even other country levels that have taken a look at this very issue, for which we are grateful. So let's talk about healthy friendships and family, friendships, including your cousins and aunts and uncles and sisters and other folks like that. How do you describe, when you talk about a healthy friendship, when you think about the relationships that you feel best about, the ones that work the best for you, how do you describe those?
The first thing that came to mind when I saw this question was affectionate.
Mm-hmm.
All of my close friends, close family members always say I love you when we're leaving. There was a book I actually bought Callie for Christmas called Text Me When You Get Home, about how that's like a modern way of women saying we love each other, making sure that your little pack is safe and everything. But my friends and I will just send each other random messages out of the blue that's like, I miss you so much, I love you, how are you doing? So yeah, really, really affectionate. And then also open communication is the other thing. The flip side of that is honesty and letting someone know how you're feeling and why you're feeling it. Great. And that doesn't necessarily have to be about them, but also just about your life.
Yeah, well, we'll talk. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in there that you touched on that we'll touch on as signs and actions that you can take around, signs that you have a healthy relationship, as well as actions you can take to create healthier relationships. But yeah, I mean, basically our friendships and our the family, good, healthy relationships really kind of come down to a lot of things you were talking about: communication and sharing, respect and trust. I mean, so actions would be the communications and sharing. I mean, you're in a relationship, in a friendship. You spend time with people, you spend energy with people because you like them, because that gives you something back, and you're enjoying that association. And so, the most important part of basically any healthy relationship is that you talk, and you listen, right? You spend time engaging. It's about engaging with your people, your tribe, your friends, and family. So, you share what's interesting to what's interesting to you. You share your feelings, both positive and negative. You listen to them as they share what's important to them and what they're going through and how they're feeling and reacting to the things that are happening in their lives. And that just lets you know that, hey, we're important to each other. And trust is that fundamental, we've talked about it before, trust is that fundamental part of any relationship. You can't really have a relationship without trust. And what you've got, in that sharing is you trust each other to know that, you can be vulnerable and you can share things, and you can trust them with those feelings and with your thoughts and ideas, and you don't have to worry about other people finding out inappropriately, or them belittling you, or doing other things that are negative, and make you feel bad. You respect each other for who you are, and even when you disagree about something, there's still enough affection and enough respect and enough trust to be able to have a conversation without judging and without demeaning or diminishing the other person. And so, I think those are, it's pretty, like we've just talked about in the past with these other relationships, healthy relationships are pretty straightforward. It doesn't mean they're easy necessarily, but there's a lot of commonalities. And whether you're talking about a relationship with yourself or with your partner or with your tribe, your tribe of friends and family, things like, honoring trust and respecting each other so that you can build the trust that you need, communicating openly and honestly about what you're going through and what you're thinking and what you're seeing and what you're feeling, and then sharing the time and your experiences with each other. Those are pretty fundamental, and they really transcend all the different relationships you have. We talked last week, the difference between a relationship with yourself and a relationship with your partner is that you've got a second person to consider. And so it gets a lot more complicated in communication, which isn't a problem when you're just having a relationship with yourself. Communicating becomes really, really important. And it remains important as we broaden from a partner, from a single person, to many different people. You still need to have that good communication. So do you feel, so when when you think about your best relationships, how often are you talking and interacting with those folks?
It kind of depends on the friend. The people that I would say are like my core group of best friends, we probably, at the very least, have a text conversation like every other day. Like, I'm
Okay.
very close to my close friends, but
Yeah.
that's like 2-3 people. I have a lot of close friends who I will text like once a week and have a conversation with, but the people that I'm like, no, these are my best friends, they're the ones that I constantly.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And when you talk about it, do you have, and I guess one of the things we should probably think about is, you're going to have different levels of friendship, right? I mean, you're going to be really close to maybe your sister who you grew up with, and friends that you've had for decades, in my case, and you'll share things with them maybe that you wouldn't share with somebody that you just knew. So and I think that's, when we talk about sharing and we talk about all this stuff, it needs to be, well, we'll talk about balance in a few minutes, but it needs to be appropriate, right? I mean, you're not going to come out and just, when somebody you're just getting to know, you're not going to come out and, tell them your deepest, darkest fears. That would be too vulnerable and maybe too intrusive, too much pressure for them to feel comfortable. So how do you decide what to share and what not to share with friends? Is that a conscious thing, or is that just sort of intuitive for you?
It's real intuitive to me. I joke often that when I meet someone new, I just kind of like pick up my backpack full of baggage and dump it on the table. And if they're like, that's a lot, then I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to get super close to you. The people who are like, cool baggage, look at mine, I'm like, oh yeah, we're on the same wavelength.
I see.
So it tends to be that. I mean, like, there's an intuitive vetting process before this happens, but I definitely tend to just be more of a, here's all the stuff about my life first. And if they think it's weird that I shared that, then I'm like, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, well, you're like your mother in that regard, I suspect. Yeah, she is a full discloser and an open share. I'm far more
Make a lot of friends though.
reserved. Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, I will, I'll share deep, dark secrets, but it'll take a while. And so I don't just kind of dump on the table, here's what I'm about. I tend to talk about a thing and share my thoughts about that specific thing without going much farther than that.
Well, part of the trick to it too is that the stuff that I dump on the table is stuff that I have fully worked out. It is not something I am expecting the other person to take on or help me work through or anything. It's like, oh yeah, here's the PTSD I have from an abusive relationship, but like that's something I've been in therapy for and can deal with on my own. And it's just like, this is a thing about me. And if they think it's weird that I'm just open about that, then I'm like, yeah, you're probably not my kind of person then.
Fair.
And typically they react, and most often someone does not share their deepest, darkest stuff back, but they react positively to me sharing mine, and then it deepens the relationship. And then further on, they give me the stuff back. And then it's like, oh, look at us. Now we're close friends for life, and you know too much about me, so I have to kill you if you decide not to be friends with me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's I think and here's I think an important part of some of the stuff that showed up when I was researching this is that you need to trust and respect yourself and the other person, but that also means that you need to trust and establish boundaries, like you do with any relationship. What are you comfortable sharing? And when we start to contrast healthy and unhealthy relationships, that's something that comes up. If just kind of going through the checklist here, we've got one that I found. I think this is from the Australia side. Being in a healthy friendship, you feel good about yourself when you're with your friend. I mean, that's probably, how do you feel when you're with your friend is probably the best indication of whether they're a good friend, whether this is a healthy friendship or not. I mean, if you're happy, upbeat, energized by the friend, look forward to it, that's in all likelihood going to be a really positive friendship. If you're anxious, if you're nervous, if you're afraid, if you're if there's just something in the pit of your stomach that's like, oh, this is going to be really unpleasant, that's probably a pretty good sign that this is that your friendship is not in a healthy place. And if that's the way you feel all the time, then it's probably a pretty good indication that it's not a healthy friendship. If you're agitated or sad, upset, anxious, not good, not good. And this concept of balance that we talked about, this sort of equality of sharing, and that it's not just about that, but it's about the things that you do, the things that you talk about, and how much you talk. There needs to be a balance there that you both are comfortable with. If you're only talking about things that are of interest or on the mind of your friend, and you never get the chance to speak of things that are on your mind, or consequent, or the other side of that, conversely, that you're the one who's dominating the conversation, then that's not much of a friendship either. That balance, and this gets into kind of what you're sharing about. If I'm telling you all of my anxieties and fears, and then you're telling me what you had for breakfast, that's not a relationship that's in balance either, and that's not gonna over time. I mean, every day is going to be different, and like all relationships, the balance really is about the balance through time, not in each moment or each discrete set of interactions that you have. But there needs to be that respectful, that balance where you're both giving and taking equally from the relationship. Feeling safe, that you can say something that's vulnerable. If you feel that you can say things like that to your friends, that's a pretty good sign of a healthy relationship. But if you're holding back, or you're uncomfortable because of something your friend is doing, that's maybe a warning sign too, to think about, is this really a healthy relationship? Are we in a well-balanced, respectful, mutually beneficial relationship, or if somebody haven't had advantage here? You trust and respect your friend. You trust and respect them by honoring their confidences. And even if they don't tell anybody about this, if it's an embarrassing thing, you don't want to run off and tell some of your other friends, oh, you won't believe what Joe just did, blah, blah, blah. if your privacy isn't respected, or you're not respecting the privacy of your friends, then that's not a great sign. The fact that you want to be there, that you want to spend time, want to commit time is precious, it's a precious resource. So you want to feel like it's time well spent, as opposed to feeling an obligation. That sounds like, oh, I don't really want to, but I suppose I have to spend time with this friend. That's, another sign that maybe, and it's back to, how do you feel about it? The fact that you can be yourself, that you can share all of the things of yourself, whether those are good or bad, or ugly or funny or whatever, without having to censor yourself, censor what you think, censor to shape yourself so that you would fit better. If you act differently around your friend than you act normally, that's also a pretty good indication that maybe this isn't a perfectly healthy kind of place. So, those keys to a healthy relationship, I mean, in terms of what that looks like, there's balance. There's a willingness versus an obligation to engage. You've got things in common, things that you can talk about, things you can do. Whether those are past experiences or interests, or whatever that can be, and also, you got that respect and trust. So those are the key. When you're in a good relationship, those are the kind of things to look for. And when you don't have those things, and when you have some of those other negative things, you might want to take a deeper look at the friendship. I mean, and every relationship is going to have moments of discomfort and where you're not quite in sync. But the healthy relationships, you can get through those moments fairly quickly and honestly and openly. Have you had a situation or a friendship where you've been in a bad place and been able to get out of a bad place and back to a good, healthy?
Actually, yeah, experienced both. The first one that comes to mind is actually one of the people that's in my best friend list. Um,
That
when
you
I got
text every other day?
yes, honestly, she's more every day. We text pretty much constantly, about everything always.
Good.
When I got back with my now ex, like the fourth time, she was not happy about it. Um, and she admitted later that she was like, yeah, I didn't handle it in the best way. And then there were a couple other things that had like led up to that. Like she had shared things about me with her partner that I then found out because I'm friends with him too. And I was like, I didn't want you to share that with anyone. Um, but she actually, we like kind of avoided, we kind of like fell out of sync. We were still friends, but it wasn't like we used to. And we both kind of felt awkward about it. And then like a couple months later, she texted me and she was like, I'm really sorry. Like I totally dropped the ball on you. And I love you. You're clearly doing really well and you made a good decision. And like, I was just caught off guard and didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, no, I get it. I get why you reacted the way you did. So we talked about it and now we text every single day again.
Good.
But then another relationship that I actually recently ended, we were in a situation where she pretty much checked every single thing on the unhealthy list, where I didn't feel comfortable around her. I felt like I had to hang out with her. I didn't feel like I could tell her things about me and have them be respected or kept private. And I just didn't feel safe or happy in that relationship at all. So I ended that and it went about as well as you think that ending an unhealthy friendship is gonna go. Um, but it kind of furthered the point that I was experiencing with my other friend that was like, we went through a similar situation where we weren't in the best place. And because we love each other and also do have a good foundation, we were able to get through it, versus when someone checks every single one of the unhealthy boxes, there might not be anything worth salvaging there.
Well, I think that's the question you have to ask yourself about a friendship is, can you save it and are you willing to make the effort? It's like any relationship, I think. And a romantic relationship is a little bit different because those are, you want to be aligned on, 95% of the things that you need, that you want. And it's hard, and requires a lot of work. And this is why you have one of those because of the energy that's required. You can have many different friendships and they should be fairly easy and and the emotional stakes aren't as high. But they're still important and they're still high. And you have to kind of say, boy, is this a relationship that I really want to, salvage? And a good friendship, like the first relationship you discussed, is you kind of make the overture. You own the behaviors, and you own the things. You're part of what is creating the issues between you. And if you both can do that, then that's indicative that you do have the trust, and you do have respect, and you're able to move past it. Whereas, like
There's
you said,
also one of the indicators is that as when you're in a healthy relationship that's in an unhealthy place, you typically still check most healthy boxes and a couple unhealthy boxes. You're not going to be all the way in unhealthy if it's a good relationship anyway. And like that's how it was with this other friend, was like I still felt safe around her. I still knew that like I could be myself around her. I didn't want to come to her with like secrets at the time until she talked to me about it. But like we still would like go to a place that we wanted both to go together. So there's still, and like there still was the give and take. And it just like the unhealthy thing was just like, ooh, I don't feel like my privacy is being respected, or you don't respect my decisions. But other, like everything else was still there. Whereas the other relationship, it was like, when I was talking about it with my therapist, actually, of if I want to ignore it, talk about it, or just end it, it was kind of like, what would you have to talk about? What are you trying to go back to? And that's when I realized, like, I don't want to go back to anything because I've never liked our dynamic.
Hmm. Yeah, and that I think that's the thing, is that you had a healthy relationship that got a little sideways, but with that history that you had, and just kind of the what kind of people they are and person they are, and the fact of the matter is, if this first person had been someone to hold a grudge and not to let go of things, you probably wouldn't have had a great relationship to begin with. Whereas things do happen in the course of just time and time with people. And you get crosswise with anybody. That's a sign. When that conflict does arise in any relationship, you want to address it head on, and you want to tackle it. And if you can do that, if you can talk about it, if you can have that conversation, that's a great indication that this is by and large a healthy relationship, and could be salvaged with a little honesty and openness and trust and respect. And that's what you're able to do. If you don't have those things to begin with, you're and you're doing this, and you're doing something out of either an obligation or just because it's what you've always done. Those probably aren't the best reasons to hang on to.
Yeah, and it became very apparent in the explosion of the latter relationship, as I was explaining my reasons, because I didn't just want to be like, screw you, bye.
Right.
Which is not a cuss word, which is
No.
almost not what I said. I was trying to explain nicely what I was feeling, instead of just being like, you make me feel not good inside. I was just trying to explain it nicely, and her response was like, you're lying, you're not telling the truth, clearly that's not what you meant, clearly this is what you meant. And it was kind of like, well, this just furthers my point, is you don't believe me when I'm talking to you.
Right.
So,
yeah, you're not respecting me. You don't. Yeah, you're not respecting that I'm telling you the truth. Yeah.
There's no trust there. So it
No
was like,
trust.
this just furthers the point that this is not worth continuing. Whereas when the former friend, not former as in old, the first friend, when she came to me and was like, this is what I was experiencing and why I reacted that way, I was like, I totally get that, because I know you and I saw that that's how you reacted, and this is where I was and how I reacted. And she was like, oh yeah, that's who you are too.
Yeah.
So there was like the trust of like, I'm taking what you say as what you say. I'm not trying to read into it or tell you that you're not meaning what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Good. Good. Well, more signs of good, healthy relationships, that you're take caring yourself as well as the other person. Because remember, this is about balance. This is about you and them. Not, in a relationship, there has to be room for both of you, and room for both of you sort of in total, so that you're not sort of picking and choosing what you're taking from the friend. You're accepting them as they are. Now, you may only interact with them around a work thing. So you've got work friends, right? You're only react, but that doesn't mean that you're not making space for all of them, because of course when they're at work, they're a whole person. Even if you're just talking about things that are work related, the way they behave, the way they talk, the sense of humor that they bring, or whatever it is that they bring to that, you have to make room for that. So, and you're both people are honoring kind of that space, right? You're not possessive. It's not like if you, because you're respectful. It's like I respect your decisions to spend time with who you want to spend time with, and I may want to spend more time with you, but you don't have that time to spend with me. We can talk about it, but I need to respect that in you. I can't cling to you and demand that you spend more time with me. We share decisions. It's not always, well, I don't, let's, we went to the concert that you wanted to go to. I'd like to go to the ball game. Well, I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to go to the ball game. That's not balanced. That we talked about, the privacy, that you respect each other's boundaries and what they're willing to disclose and comfortable disclosing and acknowledging that. The signs of an unhealthy relationship, and they're probably easier to spot in relationships that your friends are having with other people than they are in your own, oftentimes. But when you're overly focused on somebody, that's as bad as being completely unfocused on them. So if there's the selfish, there's the relationship that's unhealthy because it's selfish, and then there's the relationship that's unhealthy because it's just one-sided, and the person is just giving constantly and not ever taking anything back from that. That's also not a healthy space. So again, this concept of balance, I think, is really, really important and a good thing to look for. But if you see a friend of yours who's either taking from another friend, or giving and never getting anything back, that's a sign that, boy, that's not really a great place. If they're just having to justify every time they go or do or say anything. We talked last week about with a partner, it's important. You don't have a right to know every single thing that's on their mind and every single thing that they're doing and every single place that they're going. There needs to be a trust there. And that's true with friends as well. You shouldn't have to justify anything that you're doing to a friend. Your friend will respect your decisions. And if they have a question about it, though, they should be able to be comfortable to ask you, well, why are you doing that? But then accept it, right? I mean, they don't get to choose how you spend your life. That there's shared decision making, there's respect of private space and things. And if you're hiding things from your friends, that's not really a great sign either. And if you see your friends hiding and not sharing information in relationships, that's not great. And of course, if there's any kind of abuse, that's pretty good. Yelling, hitting, demeaning, diminishing, those are really very destructive things. And we tend to, when we see those, we tend to clue in. But there's a whole host of other things that are unhealthy behaviors that don't rise to that abuse level that are still, can still affect you. So what do you think your biggest challenges to create a healthy relationship with family and friends and colleagues? What gets in the way of that?
It's hard to say currently, but things that I've dealt with a lot in the last couple of years, because I feel like I have some really good relationships that I haven't been able to have before. The first one is honest communication. That was always something that I really struggled with on my end. There's a time that comes up that I was so embarrassed about this until recently when I talked about it with her. And she was like, I don't even remember that. My friend texted me my sophomore year. She lived in a dorm, and I lived in an apartment. And she was like, hey, can I come over and make some mac and cheese? And I was having just a terrible anxiety night. I didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted to hide in my room. And I had to go work in a studio later that night, but it was going to be alone. So it was fine. And I was leaving in 40 minutes. So I just texted her and was like, oh, I'm already at the studio. So sorry, I can't let you in. But she was friends with my roommate. So she texted my roommate and was like, hey, can I come over and make mac and cheese in your apartment? And my roommate was like, yeah, go for it. And so she comes over and she sees me in my house and was like, why did you lie? And I was like, I'm having a really bad anxiety night. And she was like, you could have just said that. I would have been like, dude, it's fine. And I was like, no, you're super right. I'm so sorry. And so I've learned over the last couple of years that being honest with people about your limitations too really does help. Because sometimes when my friends text me and they're like, I really want to go out, I just can't be out in public right now. I don't judge them. I don't feel worse about being friends with them. I don't feel insulted. So I'm like, why would I think that they would hold me to that standard? And that was a boundary I was enforcing on myself. But I've done a lot of those things over the years, and only the last couple of years have I been able to genuinely tell people I can't come out because I'm scared of people.
Well, that's that honesty, right? And and it will catch you, and it will undermine trust if you're not honest, and something like that happens. You were lucky to have a friend who was willing to confront you instead of looking at you and feeling hurt, and then making assumptions and going away. Um, Instead, he or she was comfortable enough saying, "Hey, what's the deal?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of
Especially because
obvious.
like she has done that to me too, where she's been like, I'm just too anxious to do a thing tonight. I'm like, yeah, go stay home, take care of
Okay,
yourself.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
the flip side of that is also being judgmental.
Mm.
I used to have a lot of moral standards of what people had to do to be a good person. And it's not that I would like say them, I would just kind of like think it to myself.
Mhm.
But then I was in a lot of abusive relationships and made a lot of bad decisions the first couple of years in college. Uh, and my friends didn't say anything to me about them. They were just like, but they also like didn't get super close or anything. And I realized I don't want to judge people for when they come to me and they're like, I'm in this situation, or like friends who come to me and are like, I did cocaine and I didn't hate it. I'm like, I'm not here to tell you that drugs are bad, don't do them. Like, I want you to feel safe. So if you're in a bad situation and cocaine is involved, you can call me and I can come help you. So that was something I kind of struggled to make clear to a lot of my friends, is that like, I'm not going to punish you for doing something that I want to do.
Yeah, and that's that respect, right? I mean, you don't get to choose what people do. Just like, I mean, and it's interesting because, people didn't, you were in bad relationships and people didn't come to your rescue,
Mhm.
but they were respecting in a lot of, well, a lot of ways, they were
Yeah.
respecting your choices. And
But they
so,
also like the flip side of that is they also wouldn't like talk to me about it.
well,
Um,
yeah. And so
Which I
that's a
get,
different thing.
like, I'm not expecting anybody to come to my rescue in an abusive relationship kind of situation, but I want, um, it would be kind of a situation where they would be like, oh, you're in a bad relationship. I don't want to hear about it. And it's like, that doesn't really help anyone. So when my friends come to me and they're like, this person said this thing to me, I'm like, that's not good. I don't like that they're treating you like that. And kind of like nudge them in that direction, but I'm never going to say to someone outright, like, you shouldn't be in that unhealthy relationship. And I don't want to hear about it anymore,
Yeah.
because like, I, that doesn't make them feel like they can come to me. That just affects our relationship, not their relationship.
Right. So, yeah, so you need to honor both pieces of that. You need to honor the honesty. Hey, this is what I think is going on in your relationship. It's your relationship. You choose how you want to do this. And I'm not gonna, my love for you is unconditional. I'm not gonna condition my love on your breaking up with this person or standing up for yourself or whatever. But it bothers me when I see you like this, and I'm gonna set a boundary myself about, I'm not gonna want to be around this person. Is not treating you like I think you need to be treated, but I'm also going to respect that you are an adult and you get to make your own choices. And if that's a relationship that matters to you and has value to you, then I'm not going to tell you to get out of it. So
And that's the difference in the conversation of like the friends that I had at the time of my first abusive relationship. Not that I've really had situations like that since then, but when I got back together with my ex, which was ultimately a healthy relationship, a lot of my friends were not thrilled, but they had that same like conversation with me. They were like, "We'll give him a chance, but if it goes downhill, like we are quarantining you in a room until you see it." And it was like, that's what I wanted to hear, was more like, we support you, but like we also are going to make you do the hard thing if you're not happy.
yeah,
Uh, which is what was more helpful than just like, I don't want to hear about it. So and those are the people that are now like the people I text every day.
right, yeah.
But, like,
Well,
I also
because
would do the same for them.
they've demonstrated
Mhm.
that they're there for you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think that, establishing that trust and gaining that trust and then maintaining it by continuing to do the things that build healthy relationships. So let's talk about that. I mean, we've talked about what a healthy relationship looks like, but how do you build a healthy relationship? How do you go about creating one intentionally, consciously go about creating a healthy relationship? What are the things that you do? Um, and do you do them again sort of intuitively, or do you actually set out to do these things consciously to make a relationship, to make a friendship really work?
It's a mix of both. I mean, before pre-pandemic times, I made plans a lot easier because I love coffee dates. I like going to things. I really hate Zoom calls.
Hmm.
Oh, sorry, Dad.
It's all
They're
right.
just awkward. Don't like them. But one of the things that I've like consciously made an effort to do more is asking questions. Like when you text someone to start a conversation, don't lead with like, this is the, I mean, like you can lead with things that happen to you, but like a lot of my friends are going through a lot of stuff right now. This pandemic's been really hard. So when we're having conversations, I try after I talk about an issue of mine and I feel like we've solved it, instead of just ending, and then switch it and be like, but how are you doing? So it's kind of a conscious, like really make sure that they also feel listened to and heard and
Hmm.
supported.
Hmm.
And then also sometimes like your friends are going through stuff like their grandma having cancer and you're going through a breakup and you're like, this sucks, but I'm going to focus on you first.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then we can talk about my thing.
Yeah.
Um, which
Well,
is
that's it.
like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's that second piece that you talked about is really interesting because you are going to, in any relationship, you're going to, somebody's going to need a bigger piece of that relationship and a bigger piece of attention than the other person, and sometimes it's not always conveniently separated out. Um, but being able to sort of recognize, okay, this is, I'm not in a great place, but I care enough about this person that I'm willing to put my, sort of agony and discomfort on hold for a little while to talk with them about theirs, because theirs is,
also a good reason to have more than one best friend, because
yes,
when that while I'm taking care of my friend whose grandma has cancer, I can then text my other friend who's chilling at home and be like,
right,
I'm sad.
right,
So,
right, exactly, yeah. Well, there's that. I was just reading recently about the concentric circles of grief, and how do you manage grief, and the deal is you can't, you've got the person it's happening to is kind of ground zero. And then, kind of their immediate people who are dealing with it with them are in that first concentric circle. So that would be a partner or parents or, siblings, whatever. So like in the case of cancer, right? You've got, the people who have to deal with that every single day. And then the next level is that, that next level out, the people that are not dealing with it every single day, but are still close enough to, to what's going on, either, brothers-in-law or sisters-in-law or or aunts or uncles or good friends or whatever. And then there's the next, circle out, which are the people that, are PTA friends, or maybe they're, um, work friends or whatever. But, and the whole thing is you're not allowed to complain about your feelings, or you're not allowed to share your feelings about it with anybody who's closer to you, closer than you to the person who's at that ground zero. You can only dump out. In other words, you can only look for support away from that. So in your case, you're going through a breakup, um, at that kind of ground zero. Then the two or three people around you who are giving you the most support. Um, nobody else is allowed to dump on those people. You're allowed to dump on those people, but they can't dump on you. And nobody outside there, in that next circle can dump on them. And it's that same kind of concept that you've got to recognize where people are, and is this appropriate for me to share my grief, agony, upset to somebody who's even more upset than I am? And the answer is no, you're not. That's not a cool thing to do. And anyway, I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of assess, boy, I'm feeling bad. I'd like to share those feelings with somebody. I probably shouldn't share how sad I am with the partner of the person who's going through cancer, or the daughter of who's suffering from cancer. That makes me sad. I don't think I should tell them how sad I'm feeling, because they're already, carrying a pretty heavy load. They don't need my stuff on top of it. And so, being a friend is taking into account um, what they're going through, and putting yourselves in their shoes and understanding kind of where they are, and then respecting that, and behaving in a way that's kind and respectful of their position. So, but yeah, so here, some of the things some of the actions to take. I mean, how do you create healthy relationships? The first one is to invest in it, engage, make the effort. You're friends because you like spending time and you like being with these people. So spend time and be with them. Set up things. I'm a big scheduler, as you well know. So, my
shocked.
Yeah, no, I've got book clubs and exercise dates and coffee, different coffee things and all kinds of stuff where I make time to schedule time to see friends because I'm not good spontaneously reaching out. I don't, it doesn't occur to me to reach out to people in the spur of the moment. So blocking time and setting it aside means that's, because these people are important to me. I want to spend time. I know I can't do it spontaneously or I'm not very good at that. So I'll schedule time, to be with them. And the other thing is share yourself, right? Share what you're going through. Share, these are friends. These are the people you want to be with. Part of that is being able to share in each other's experiences and, um, you know, make those concrete plans to be together. And when you're together, share. That's the friendship. And you can build momentum in a friendship by doing those things, by honoring, watering and tending to the friendship by spending time and spending quality time. That's those two things, time and quality are the two pieces of that makes the friendship really work. Another thing you can do is help them with their priorities. Ask them like you were, how are you doing? What do you need? And then see, can I help them in a way that's not going to derail what I want to accomplish for myself? But if I can do something that without a ton of effort, that's not gonna diminish or take away what I want to accomplish myself, why wouldn't I do that? I mean, these are people that I like and respect and I want to see them happy. So, let me understand what's important to you and see how I can help you accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. And then be clear. This is that honesty part, right? Just be honest. Always be honest. And that doesn't mean unkind. It just means share what you're thinking, share what you're feeling. And when you make a mistake, do what your friend did. Reach out and say, you know what, I blew that. And that's part of honesty too. I recognized I made a mistake. What's that?
I have an addendum on that one also. One of the things my therapist helped me with is often in friendships, when something goes wrong, it's not just one person messing up. I mean, in any relationship, but it's easier to notice in friendships. It's sometimes I don't know why it's easier to tell your friends you are wrong than your partner.
Well, the emotional stakes aren't as high, right? And the fear of rejection isn't quite as high either.
So I got into a little thing with one of my close friends in college who we're still pretty close today. And we were going to live together, but just like our priorities weren't the same and trying to figure out the place to live. And I felt like I was doing all the work. And so I just kind of like got an apartment and was like, bye, I'm done. And like wanted an apology from her because she like put all this work on me and then got mad at me when I just like got my own place. And so when I talked to my therapist about it, I was like, I'm really upset about this whole thing. And she was like, I mean, if you want an apology from her, you can lead with an apology from like, figure out what you did wrong too, because then that kind of opens the door. So I was able to be like, you know what? I should have told you I was really frustrated and that I was just going to go live with someone else instead of just kind of springing it on you last minute. I should have like communicated more with you. And then she was able to be like, you're right. Like, and I'm sorry, I put it all on you. I've been really focused with all this stuff lately. And so it was like, and we're still friends.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
like, if you also like want an apology from someone else, and when like say when you're wrong. And then on the flip side, when someone comes to you and was like, I was wrong about this thing, it's you probably also did something wrong and should apologize for that too.
Well, yeah, and you need to be kind and you need to acknowledge and appreciate because that's kind of the next thing is be appreciative and be affectionate, like you talked about. We kicked this thing off with you saying that you're affectionate with your friends. Yeah, with guys you see a lot, punching in the arms and giving noogies and stuff. Those are all just ways to kind of have physical touch in a way that's maybe not quite as vulnerable, but that just telling people, hey, I really appreciate you. I really like you. I have a very good friend who's very good at this. He will regularly say, I really, really love spending time with you. You're wonderful. He's always telling you exactly how he feels. He's a terrific, he's a wonderful, wonderful friend, and that he is very open, very honest, and he demonstrates and lets us know how he appreciates us and the affection that he feels for us. So, yeah, you're be honest, tell people this is I do like spending time with you. You are very cool. I really love you. Remember all that stuff. Another thing that's helpful is remembering important things like birthdays and, um, acknowledging, somebody's going to retire. Acknowledge that. That's a big deal. Whether they think it's a big deal or not, just the fact that that you would notice it and would remark on it and that you took note is an indication that.
On the flip side of that, since my millennials and Zoomers are probably not retiring right now,
Oh, no.
a lot of my friends and I know when we're starting new jobs or working in audio. A lot of I know when my friends have big sessions, so we'll tell each other and be like, "How did it go today?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it's like, oh yeah, they care about me and what I'm doing.
Right. Because they paid attention and they made a note or they just remembered. Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of people go through surgeries and, I had a friend of mine who retired. I mean, there's just been a lot of things that have happened like this. And again, I'm not really, really good at that. So I'll just put a note. I'll just put it in my phone. Hey, set a reminder on, 3 weeks from Tuesday to say, hey, how did the surgery go or whatever? Because, and some people, oh, it's cheating. You're not really remembering. Well, I don't remember very well, but I still want to let them know that I care. And that I care what they're going through. And so I'll make a note. I'll take the time to put the note in so that I don't forget. And I think that's, those kind of things are important. And just again, with conflict, work through it, be honest, talk through it. Don't, find a solution that works for both of you. And if you can find things to do together, develop shared interests. I've got some of my best friends in the world are people I've met because we started exercising together, and that we still do that. But that's led to going out for beers and going out to meals and having parties and going to people's houses and going on trips together and all these other things. And so friendships are wonderful, wonderful. But and the rules for them, a good, healthy friendship, are pretty straightforward. And we've talked at length about them. But what happens when you're in a bad relationship? You've identified an unhealthy relationship or friendship. What do? So you've shared a couple of instances. Although in one case, there was the person that came to you that said, hey, I screwed up. And you were open and to that. And in the other relationship you talked about, you ended a friendship essentially, but you broke up with a friend by saying, hey, this isn't really working with me. So are there been any other things that you can remember when you've had to address a friendship straight on and had to deal with that?
A couple. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it happened in high school. There's a lot of, I'm sure you remember my friend Roma in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Had a couple different head-on, hey, this thing was not cool.
Yeah.
And they've either completely imploded or they go well. Such as high school.
Yeah. Well, it's less experience in doing it, right? So you get better with stuff as you do it, and hopefully you don't have to break up with friends a lot, because if you can, create those good, healthy relationships, there's no real need to break up friendship. But ending a relationship is not. I mean, an unhealthy relationship can be really, really damaging to self-esteem, to energy, to focus. It can get violent. I mean, none of these things are really great. So, working to healthy relationships, and when you can't fix a relationship, not that it's up to us individually to fix them, but if you working with your friend can't get to a point where you feel like this is a healthy relationship, then you need to, you need to be honest about that.
There's also you don't have to try is kind of something that I learned in the relationship I talked about earlier that I ended, was that I didn't feel like I could safely come to her and say, hey, these things that you've done have really hurt my feelings. Here's how we can work on them. I didn't feel like I could say that and it would be well received.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? That's kind of a sign that I don't feel safe here. So it's not like you don't have to. There's not a list of steps that you have to get to in order for something to be over. If you don't want to take like a communicate about it step, then that's a pretty clear indication that it's time to just be like, bye.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's fair. And I think that's true in any relationship. If you can't, if you look at it and say, you know what, talking about it is just it's way too much energy than I want to commit to this, then it's your relationship is actually over, and you just have to make it explicit, right? And you can ghost people, but that's not very respectful. I mean, it may, this may be an unhealthy relationship for you, but that doesn't make them evil.
Ghosting is allowed if you've never met someone in person.
Is that what it is?
That is my rule on ghosting on dating apps.
No.
If I'll just stop talking to people, it's fine. But if I've gone on a date with you, or if you're a friend and I've hung out with you, I'm not going to ghost you just because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not respectful.
no.
It's not treating people well. And so, but breaking up a friendship is the same as breaking up a romantic partnership, a relationship that way, a partner relationship. The same principles apply, which is, this person is deserving of respect. So do it in a private place where you're not going to embarrass them or humiliate them. Give them a chance to have an honest reaction that isn't, that is private. Be very intentional about it. Go into it knowing what you're going to do. Be clear, be firm, be honest for sure, but also be kind and listen and respect their reactions and answer any questions that they have. But back to being firm and being clear. This friendship just isn't going to work for me, and so I'm not going to be hanging out with you. I'm not going to be, I'm going to block you on social media, or I'm going to unfriend you, or whatever you do, unfollow, whatever you do on those social media platforms. That's what I'm going to do, and that's just the way it's going to be. It's not this isn't a relationship that's working for me, and I want to put my energies elsewhere. And I respect you enough to tell you that, and I wish you well, and then leave. After all that. So it's the same kind of principles. Relationships are, they do vary. And we've talked about a little bit about here, the emotional stakes can be very, very different. But they're still emotional stakes, and the foundational principles of respect, honesty, trust, all those things, are common among all relationships. It's just the degree of engagement, the degree of emotional vulnerability and sharing time, all those things that you want to do. So that's pretty much what we have today. Anything else to add?
Nope.
All right then. Very good. So no follow-up items now that we've settled the courtship of Miles Standish. By who? Who wrote the courtship of Miles Standish, Addie?
Longfellow.
Very good. Do you know his first name and his middle name? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
I just know it because of the joke.
Yes.
It's my favorite joke of all time. My favorite dad joke.
That's a pretty good one, right? What and what is it? So for our listeners,
when you rhyme and you say I'm a poet and I didn't know it, but my feet show it, they're Longfellows.
Very nice, very nice. Well done.
That's up there. I have a second favorite dad joke too, but
oh, do you? Well, that's we'll have to save that for another time. But yes, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I believe he wrote the Song of Hiawatha as well, and the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, I think, was also.
Yes, he did.
So,
definitely
a Revolutionary War era poet for sure. But yes, the courtship of Miles Standish. No Venmo, no bad words.
Narrowly missed that one.
Well, we could talk about naked time and why that is or it is not. Naked time. Anyway, what's our topic for next week, Addie?
Our topic for next week is, sorry, Claire just shook right into the microphone.
I see that.
How do we have a healthy relationship with the world, which is a little more broad than we did today, which is more about like feeling, how do you keep yourself from feeling lost and feeling alone and being the kind of person you want to be?
All right. That sounds great.
All right. Well, you can find us on awkwardfamilyconversations.com, on Twitter at awkwardfamilyc1, and witness my dad tweeting from the wrong account frequently. Now that I'm back in the Twitter sphere, I realize that you frequently forget to log out and then respond to tweets with the Awkward Family Conversations one. So if you want to see Rhett Brat Twitter activity.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry, Catherine.
You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen at Awkward Family Conversations. I doubt we're on any sort of piracy app yet, so you probably can't find us there. We're not that cool.
Not yet.
Not yet. Someday. Let us know what you think. Keep questions and suggestions coming, DMs, messages, comments, direct texting us, and we'll see you next week. I love you, Dad.
That's good. All right. I love you, Ad. See you next week.
I'm a sleepy cat.
There she is. All right. Bye, Ed.